we'll go and see the. But being unable to understand the original message of Buddha.
Very head. This is probably an influence of Thailand. Good morning. Today is the 7th of February. We have started from Sigiriya, and from the Habarana junction we have taken right today to go towards Polonnaruwa, and right now we are crossing the Minaria National Park.
Elephant.
Yeah, it's a wild elephant.
You have to go and cross.
Yeah,
You can't stop
okay.
there.
If you want, you can open it.
There's a wild elephant on the road. We are at the Minaria National Park, and in the lake we can see an elephant bathing. From the highway itself, it's a very lucky sight. This is our bus, and we are here on the road, on the highway. And the elephant is just here. We are just outside the Minaria National Park. We are clicking some photos of the birds.
Good morning to you all. All right. Have you all ever been to Sri Lanka and Polonnaruwa before? No.
This is the first
This is the first time. Then okay, right. And you know, before that, are you interested in a little bit of history of Sri Lanka?
Yes.
Okay. This island has been inhabited since time immemorial. Okay, and the earliest archaeological evidence of human settlements or human colonies dates back to the prehistoric period in the Old Stone Age, about 125,000 years back. So they were known as hunter-gatherers. Sorry to interrupt. So here, what you find on your right is a man-made reservoir, originally constructed by First Kingdom rulers, because Anuradhapura was the very first kingdom of Sri Lanka. So this was constructed before Polonnaruwa period, okay? And what you can see is only a part of the reservoir. The entire body of water is about 70 square kilometers. So these people are known as hunter-gatherers, lived by hunting animals and lived in small caves. So the hunter-gatherer people known as Vedas, who live still in Sri Lanka, in some parts of Sri Lanka, are probably the direct descendants from these ancient inhabitants, right? And you know, cinnamon is something native to Sri Lanka. So discovery of cinnamon in Egypt as early as 15th century BC suggests our early international trade. About 600 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, that is mean 6th century BC, a young prince from North India, exiled prince from North India, came down to Sri Lanka and kind of captured and established the first kingdom of Sri Lanka, today known as Anuradhapura. So okay, and it lasted for about 15 centuries, and it was during this period Buddhism was introduced to Sri Lanka. And at the time there was not any recognized religion in Sri Lanka except for, you know, Hinduism was slightly practiced, but there was not any other recognized religion. So because of the wise attitudes of the kings, the whole country embraced Buddhism. As a result, today 70% of the population in Sri Lanka practice Buddhism. But now Emperor Rajaraja and his son Rajendra came, and they captured Sri Lanka and destroyed Anuradhapura, and established their rule here in Polonnaruwa and made this city Polonnaruwa the second capital of Sri Lanka. Now you are in the second capital of Sri Lanka. And Polonnaruwa did not last for long. How big do you think is the inner city there? It's not that big, only 10 football fields. And all the administrative buildings are located in this area, but they are not found today. In the southernmost area, you find the royal palace, the council chamber and the royal bath. After hard-fought war, he was able to liberate this area from Indians. So, having liberated, there were 19 kings and queens, Polonnaruwa period, and out of them only 3 were recognized, and people did not talk about the other kings, only 3. And they were so good that they were treated as deities, like because of their considerate attitudes towards the subject. Single king. Out of these 3 also, the second king was considered the greatest. He was known as Master of Ceylon, and his name was King Parakrambahu the Great. He was a very powerful king. He had a powerful army. He had warships. He could also make political prisoners and got them to work for him. And he could also rent out foreign armies. Cambodian soldiers were serving him at the time. But he made a few mistakes because he was so ambitious that he failed by trying to achieve more than is possible. He wanted to capture more and more countries. Okay, few more blunders were made by the same king. As a result, again in early 13th century, South Indians came. This time it was led by a pirate admiral. Pirate. So he was merciless. He came with 24,000 soldiers, and they destroyed the entire social, political, religious organization here in Polonnaruwa. They tortured Buddhist monks. They burned Buddhist scriptures. All these temples were looted by them, and they harassed people to convert to Hinduism. That was the worst period. So at the time, our kings were defenseless. So they had to leave for some other safe areas in the southwest of the country. After that, this city got abandoned and nobody lived here, and this got partially buried under earth and covered in a jungle. For about 700 years, this was neglected and abandoned, and until British archaeologists who were here in Sri Lanka, when this was a British colony in the 19th century, they found this by chance and excavated. So after the collapse of Polonnaruwa, our kingdom first shifted to a city called Dambadeniya, then Yapava, Kurunegala, Gampola, Kotte, finally Kandy. Kandy was the last kingdom of Sri Lanka, ended in 1815. It is only then that these British people took control of the whole country. But it was not the British who were first here, it was the Portuguese. Then came Dutch, finally only these British people. Okay. So this was the royal palace built by the second and the greatest king I referred to, King Parakrambahu the Great. This is described in the chronicle that this was built in the form of a pyramid. It looked like a Chinese pagoda, and 7-storied. The very first 3 stories were built by clay bricks and stone built, and the rest was completely wooden. The wooden superstructure has already collapsed. And according to the chronicle, this was beautified with thick bunches of pearls, white as moonlight, and a network of tiny golden bells suspended here and there. And they were giving forth a sound like 5 musical instruments. In a splendid way, this is described. And we'll go and have a close look. The main entrance, this large central hall, was like the lobby lounge. But it had basically functioned as a place for political audiences. But unlike today, functions like banquets, cocktail parties were also held here. Original lime mortar plaster and substances like sugar syrup, egg white and crushed seashells were also added. They set fire to this particular palace. The fire was so hot that it could melt these brick walls into balls like this. That is what you wanted, Big. I'm going to show you a funny kind of toilet here on that side, while the king was seated over there. And now we'll go and see the toilet. There was some marble cut sculpted bathtub which is being displayed over there at the moment. Can you see the bathtub over there? It is hardly visible. Can you all see?
Oh, there.
Yeah, they are over there. See,
The tree.
about 100 meters away. Not the waste matter float. Here you find the place, the toilet. Only the foot cuts can be seen, right? There would have been something for them to sit on here, like today, but they did not have a cistern, so they had to use a bucket of water to flush it through. But do you all know that the historical Buddha rejected all these statue worship? Have a look at, we have a peep. Rose granite. They are not imported, they are all locally produced. Yeah. It looks very new. You see, you know why? Because most down the line it was covered with dust and earth. About the very first Sinhalese king who had been persistent, so although I said the second was the greatest, a lot of credit should go to the first one. If it weren't for that king, the second king wouldn't be there. Maybe still the Cholas were here. Would have been here. Okay, the water was filtered with this natural filtration, and they had used charcoal, soft gravel, hard gravel and sand for the filtration. That was the change in room with an inviting wooden shelter, but shelter has already collapsed. And if you go now, all these stone slabs have been so accurately, so precisely cut, and they use something called this dry stone masonry, meaning now one stone slab had a groove in that, the other one had a peg, like a puzzle. This was constructed without using any mortar or any bonding agents. On either side of it, there are two inlets, water inlets, through which perfume water had flowed, like a jacuzzi. And city, this is the innermost wall which protected the inner city. Now we are somewhere here. This is the innermost wall. Then you get a second defensive wall, third defensive wall. Now, in addition to these three defensive walls, parallel to this wall was a protective water mouth with fierce animals like crocodiles in it. And then now we are here, then we'll be traveling in the northerly direction. So in the next cluster you find the temples, Buddhist and Hindu temples, then you get the marketplace, here you get the biggest Buddhist stupa, then the Buddhist monasteries. And on this side, it was the man-made lake or the reservoir that served as a buffer, or served as a buffer against invading armies there on that side. Represented either a minister or an official or somebody who took part in this meeting. But it is written that there were only 16 ministers. They were able to export rice to many other lands, whereas today the number of ministers is more, but rice is imported. See the development. And our ancient architects had taken maximum advantage of these natural hills. So this is one good example of a natural hill built into a complex of structures. Steps suggest this would have been a two-storied gatehouse. Now there cannot be two messages of Jesus. Likewise, there cannot be two messages of Buddha. There has to be only one. But being unable to understand the original message of Buddha, during the post-Buddhist periods, our people divided themselves into different sects or different groups. So each sect had different ritualistic activities, different norms and different traditions and everything of their own. In countries like Sri Lanka and India, you find a dome-shaped structure known as a stupa, right? But in countries like Cambodia and Thailand, you no longer find this shape. You find a structure of this shape built in the step pyramidal form. So this was built by the second king for Cambodian soldiers who were serving him at the time to worship, as a place of worship. They were made to make a public confession of their wrongdoings, not secret. Shall we get to the center? Truth built by the very first Sinhalese king, Vijayabahu I. And during the reign of that king, it was here. It has never been permanently deposited anywhere. So whenever the capital of a kingdom shifted, they could always take it with them because it was a movable object. During the reign of second king, it was here. This was built by the second and the greatest king who built that 7-storied palace. This was the third temple of the truth built by the third king. The first temple and the third temple had the same structure, 2-storied, and it was on the upper floor that the tooth relic casket was placed. And this is the most interesting and the most impressive one, because you can see today only one circle of stone pillars, but originally there were 4 more. Altogether there were 5 concentric circles of stone pillars on which 5 wooden rim beams plus a conical timber roof was built without a central post. And all these wooden rafters, beams, even these wall screens with 4 petal flowers, they were made away from the size, section by section or piece by piece. It is only then that they were brought and assembled. So people believe most probably this was the first prefabricated building in the world. And the 2 vertical, the stone slabs found on either side of the road, on either side of the entrance, are known as guard stones. Okay, and that is because of the cobra hood he is wearing. And he has a pot in one hand, in his left hand is a pot. It represents abundance or plenty. And on his right hand there is a flowering twig. It represents fortune. In Hinduism, many concepts are personified. They use, without using words, they use human fingers to represent different things. So, right at the bottom, there are 2 miniature men, which is a personification of protection. Here they represent guardians protecting the king. Found right at the floor, right at the bottom, is known as moonstone. And moonstone and the guard stone. These are the 2 unique objects of Sinhalese architecture of ancient Sri Lanka. Look at the lions. That is again another unique design of Sinhalese architecture, although there is no any evidence of lions living in the past in Sri Lanka. These lions display various behavioral patterns of lions, whereas the doves found in the context of Hinduism, okay, guardians, they display various pleasure moment activities like dancing, playing musical instruments, handstand, and so on. And look at that temple. So that is not a tooth relic temple. It is an ordinary temple dedicated to this historical Buddha, and that is the only monument found in Polonnaruwa whose original brick dome is still intact, because the other buildings have already collapsed. Thai architecture wanted his temple to have this style of statues. There are 4 statues on all 4 sides at cardinal points. All ornamentations or the sculptures that look like houses represent something related to Hinduism. They represent celestial abodes or heavenly living areas of Hindu deities or Hindu gods. I told you the mingled together Polonnaruwa period. There's a harmony between these 2 groups, So that is why, ritualistic activities like lighting oil lamps, offering flowers, practiced by Hindus are being practiced by Buddhists. Okay, if you all can stay here for more than 5 minutes, you get an amazing coolness inside due to the style of architecture. Look at this particular style of architecture, whose both flanking walls as well as the roof, okay, were made entirely out of clay bricks. So that is because of the walls with grandiose dimensions, you get an amazing coolness inside. And this architecture is it's an experimental model of Anuradhapura kingdom, originated in Anuradhapura. But Polonnaruwa period, it had become a success and more popular. That is why it is still intact. The dome is still intact. And the main attraction in the inner sanctuary was a statue of a Buddha on this pedestal. It was massive one, brick built, whose eyes were embedded with blue sapphire gemstone, so that whenever the sunlight entered through that upper opening, it always reflected on the eyes and created a unique effect on the walls. And even these statues had gems on their eyes. See the sunken eyes they have. So they had gems. Do you know something called mica? Some people call it mica, used in cosmetic industry. Can I have a phone with the torch on?
Is a part of Sri Lankan architecture which is found here in the entrance of the Buddha stupa. Usually the picture of Buddha that we have has curly hair, but here the Buddha statue is devoid of any hair. This is probably an influence of Thailand. This temple is a temple dedicated to Bodhisattva. A Bodhisattva is a person who is wanting to become a Buddha.
So he did not like that duality in his life. So he wanted to know if there was something beyond this dualistic nature. Neither happiness nor unhappiness, some sort of freedom where there is no any depression, anxiety, everlasting bliss, everlasting freedom. So that is what made him leave the palace. Because whatever the term you can use, you can. It's only a term, okay? But the water mount is no longer there, but the wall is there. Just outside the wall is the place where you had there were all sorts of trade stalls, shopping mall, restaurants on just outside.
This is the second.
And there is the second. Yeah. This is a Buddhist commemorative monument, and it's also originally
It's called as a stupa.
stupa. You call it a stupa.
So what is inside?
Yeah. Okay. Now the original purpose of a stupa like this was to enshrine the relics of this Buddha only. That was the original.
Okay.
But originally it was a solid structure without any interior space. Nobody could go inside. And but over time everything
Changed.
Yeah, changed. Today they come in different shapes, different sizes. And even the concept of a relic also extended to include not only the Buddha's relic, but the relics of some Arhat, these monks,
Other monks.
other
also.
monks, special Buddhist monk, and so on. So everything has changed. When it comes to this particular stupa, the pinnacle was golden.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So people started calling this golden pinnacle stupa, and this can also be considered as a relic stupa. You know why? Right in the center, now foundation right in the center, they had built a room with the relics inside.
Okay.
Here when it comes this one, it is 500, the bodily remains, maybe the bones of 500 such special monks were enshrined or deposited in the center. So you call it a relic stupa. Area of the city, and this monastery is known as the Northern Rock Monastery. Now this is the most impressive, the most phenomenal monastery which is a landmark of Sri Lanka. There are 4 statues representing Buddha carved out of the same granite boulder. And have you already spotted all these 4? Or how many? Only 3. The smallest one is found at man-made cave. There. It's not a natural cave, it's a man-made cave. So you can just imagine how much they suffered to convert this sort of hard rock into a cave like this. But they were so hard working that it had taken only 5 years' time to complete the whole monastery. And originally each of these statues was enclosed in a brick structure with a wooden shelter, but today only the brick foundation remains. Look at that posture is known as the meditation posture. It represents the most important event of his life, that is understanding the true nature of our life, which is an illusion. It was initially covered with a thin layer of copper and a thick layer of gold. So Indians burn it and store the gold in this. But if you can have a closer look, even today, you can see the greenish fingernails with copper oxide on them. And also right edge of the exterior wall of the cave, okay, if you can have a little peep inside through that iron thing, you can see an original, colorful 12th century paintings, which suggests that whole temple would have looked like that. And stand in posture with his arms before his chest like that. Can you all see?
Yeah.
It's a depiction of his sympathy towards the people who suffered. Having understood that your suffering is not real, not the illusion, he felt sorry for the other people who could not understand this and suffered. And the last posture has been recumbent posture has been interpreted by most people as Buddha at the time of passing away, also at his deathbed, especially because of the flat stomach and uneven toes which are not parallel, and also the half-closed eyes. But nobody knows for a fact that these are true interpretations or correct or wrong. What is more important is the skillmanship of our ancient artists, because they did not have any machinery, they had only a hammer and a chisel. So out of a hammer and a chisel they could create marvelous.
We can see the copper fingernails here, which has turned green with time. Frescoes are visible over here. The paintings are covered. Only a small part remains. Sri Vihara. We are seeing it from a distance because it's a steep climb. Subscribe to our channel for the Sigiriya village tour in the next episode.